2,640 feet. That's a half mile from the start of the Haddon Township Pride Parade at Crystal Lake Avenue to its festive end at Albertson Avenue and Haddon Square. That might not seem like a long walk to most folks, but I admit, in its inaugural year of this joyous event, that walk felt immensely far to me. Why? Well, because Haddon Township is, for all intents and purposes, a small town. Much of South Jersey, right, is comprised of small towns, shoved up next to each other, and having grown up in the 1980s in my small hometown of Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, a beautiful pastoral village of 3,000 people in the northern mountains of the Keystone State, my hometown experience as a gay kid was lonely at best and abusive at worst. I certainly felt reticent to march in a small town. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a social worker and have participated in marches, civil disobedience, parades, sit-ins, and the like. The 1993 March on Washington was, in fact, a turning point for me. I saw the offensive quasi-support from the likes of then President Clinton, hello, don't ask, don't tell, to the horrific Reagan-Bush era, where AIDS wasn't even spoken despite the epidemic fatalities of gay men who were labeled pariahs and perished, often alone and shuttered away in basements or attics by their very own families. The 93 March on Washington was the first time I ever felt part of something bigger than myself in ways that embraced me, in all of my flaming sissiness and glorious gayness. Marching was revolutionary in the face of AIDS hatred, vile homophobia, horrific racism, and lesbian, bisexual, and trans invisibility. By the way, it was lesbians and bisexual women who cared for their dying gay brothers in the 1980s and 90s, not professionals, and certainly not members of faith communities. And we gay men owe them a serious debt. But I still recalled the fear I had in high school in every gym class, at recess, in the hallways, and worse, the locker room. I won't go into the traumatic bullying that goes along with growing up gay and femme in small-town USA in the 80s, but I will say that it left scars. As a grown-up, however, I have sought healing around those scars that are now barely visible, now covered with glorious rainbows, glitter, and blush that shiver and shimmer with love and wisdom. And it is that wisdom that I reflect upon in my own trepidation in marching down Haddon Avenue 4 years ago, in heels, sequins, and a huge rainbow butterfly wings, at the front of the parade no less. And like so many of us who were shamed for simply being who we were, the queer longing to be seen, heard, and known sometimes manifests by paradoxically turning away from it. Yep, shame leads people to isolate. And a parade is anything but isolating. But see, as queer generations have learned in days gone by, pride heals shame because it shows us that we are not alone. Yet I find myself once again feeling a sense of trepidation in this presidential election years. Yes, it's because of politics and the sheer horrific realities that a second Trump administration will pose. Oh yes, I'm going there. Presidential historian Heather Cock-Richardson quoted Eric Cortelesi in the recent Time magazine interview with Trump, who intoned, Trump plans to use the military to round up, put in camps, and deport more than 11 million people. He is willing to permit Republican-dominated states to monitor pregnancies and prosecute people who violate abortion bans. He will shape the laws by refusing to release funds appropriated by Congress, as he did in 2019 to try to get Ukraine President Zelensky to smear Hunter Biden. He would like to bring the Department of Justice under his own control, pardoning those convicted of attacking the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, and ending the U.S. system of an independent judiciary. In a second Trump presidency, the U.S. might not come to the aid of a European or Asian ally that Trump thinks isn't paying enough for its own defense. Trump would, Cortelesi wrote, gut the U.S. civil service, deploy the National Guard to American cities as he sees fit, closed the White House Pandemic Preparedness Office and staffed his administration with acolytes who back his false assertion that the 2020 election was stolen. Indeed, settled law, hello, Roe v. Wade, was simply undone. You can bet that more loss of civil rights will follow. I'm afraid that my marriage will be dissolved of 30 years. The legal protections that me and mine have fought for will be erased. I do not think this is hyperbole. Last year, we saw some protesters here. This is not surprising, since we caught them off guard with our first few years of Pride here in HT. They thrive on fear and anger. They provoke, they curse, they abuse. Ultimately, they are cowards. Back in my day, we simply collectively shouted one word at them as we passed by them in the parade. Shame! 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 This righteous shaming took place organically through the entire parade that passed from one pride group to the next. And pride is antithetical to cowardice and shame. This is not to say that we don't fear, but rather we make some John Lewis good trouble despite our fear. And as I noted in the inaugural parade here at Haddon Township, we must invoke history. This is not new. While envisioned in freedom, the United States is a nation built on the backs of people with black and brown skin. Privileged groups have striven to strip the rights of myriads of folks of people in the past. Generations of folks in social movements, LGBTQIA+ folks, First Nations peoples, Black, Indigenous people of color, racial and ethnic minorities that span the rainbow, women and people with disabilities. They have resisted such systemic oppression for centuries. And how did they do it? They showed up. They spoke up, they rose up, they lifted up, they donated, they sang, they campaigned, they advocated, they voted, and they marched with conviction. And so, invoking hope and courage, my small town of Wellsboro, Pennsylvania is having their third annual Pride event, including a drag queen story hour, a drag show, and a community organization table, just like our Pride in Progress night tonight. And I'm honored to announce that I am actually making the journey north in 2 weeks to perform at that event. And I'm planning on taking a short walk of 1,320 feet, no, a march, from the Pride venue to the town square, affectionately known as the Green, where over 12 generations of my family on both sides have enjoyed festivals, parades, events, walks, and made life-changing decisions. And I'm gonna get a picture of me posing in front of the Green's majestic fountain known as Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod. And those 1,320 feet are kind of scary to take, but I won't be alone. In that vein, the love that dare not speak its name will never be silent again. Our beautiful and brilliant trans and non-binary siblings don't have to hide themselves in the light of day. Indeed, in Haddon Township, we hold each other close. We have tough conversations to learn and grow. We heal each other, we listen. In other words, we collaborate and we celebrate. I'm Professor Clitty Umbridge, and Haddon Township resident for the last 20 years. And it's my honor and pleasure to march with you. Thank you.